A pooch belly often refers to those stubborn pockets of fat in the lower abdomen that no amount of crunches or diet seems to help. While the term pooch belly might sound jovial, the consequences of it can actually be pretty serious, with some opting to pursue surgery to correct it. In fact, according to the Aesthetic Plastic Surgery National Databank, abdominoplasty, more popularly known as a tummy tuck, was the fourth most common aesthetic surgical procedure performed in the United States in 2019, with in excess of 140,000 operations carried out in that year alone. But is it excess abdominal fat in every case? Or could there be other causes a lot less clear at first glance? Today we'll be exploring exactly that. But first, as always, please take note of our disclaimer. If you type in loose pooch belly into any search engine, whether Google or YouTube, you will see that many search results will be promoting crunches to resolve it. I want to bring this up first of all, as this is primarily the way people seek to fix it, even over diet in large part. Although crunches can be helpful biomechanically in reducing the pooch belly in certain instances, which we will get into a bit later, that is not the means by which these videos propose how they help. Rather, they allude that crunches help the condition through spot reduction. Spot reduction is a claim that you can single out specific areas of body fat for reduction by exercising the associated muscles in the desired area. For example, exerting the abs to lose fat in the midsection, like in this case, or using the arms or leg musculature to improve fat stores in those areas. Yet, the reason why spot reduction doesn't work is that exercise isn't directly what burns fat. A caloric deficit burns fat, meaning expending more calories than you intake each day. Exercise just helps to facilitate this when the diet is simultaneously in check. In other words, when you regularly reach a caloric deficit, fat stores will reduce from all body regions, not just one. And think about it, if you could spot reduce with resistance training, would you really want to at the end of the day? It would only make you look disproportional if you had excess fat on the extremities, but not on the torso, or vice versa. Further, a misconception for many that these videos perpetuate is that crunches can turn excess fat in the midsection into muscle. Since fat and muscle are made from different substances, fat being from mostly triglycerides and muscle being from mostly protein, water, and glycogen, this is impossible. Saying it would be like saying it's possible to turn copper into gold, for example. Even though that would be great, again, a different composition. So then, what leads people to mistake this in the first place? Well, it's because fat stores lie over muscle stores. So when people reduce their body fat, frequently using resistance training as part of their weight loss regimen, their muscles subsequently become more apparent, giving the deceptive appearance that fat has turned into muscle through exercise. Accordingly, someone could work on their abs religiously for months and still not see any decline in waist circumference. Even though the muscles would be getting stronger underneath, the fat stores would still sit above and hide them. Moreover, just so you're aware, there are genetic predispositions for a pooch belly, as they can make us more prone to storing fat in various bodily regions. For example, hormonal genetics incline men to store more fat in the torso, while women's make them more susceptible to storing excess fat on the hips and legs. However, another genetic contributor to a pooch belly is the skeleton structure. People with a narrower rib cage will be more prone to having a pooch belly than those with a wider rib cage, for instance. So, for some people, the extent of how much they can help the condition may be limited, but definitely worth a try regardless. That said, there are other potential causes of a pooch belly outside of genetics that are much easier to treat. The first way we'll discuss is the one we briefly brought up earlier: altered biomechanics. So you're aware, the pelvis doesn't always remain neutral. In some cases, it can shift anteriorly, posteriorly, or laterally. Anterior pelvic tilt is when the pelvis rotates forward, posterior pelvic tilt is when it rotates backward, and lateral pelvic tilt is when it shifts from side to side, i.e. when one hip is higher than the other, for example. Now, it is the anterior pelvic tilt that ties in with a pooch belly. In most cases, an anterior pelvic tilt will go hand in hand with lower cross syndrome. Lower cross syndrome is a pattern of muscular imbalances arising from suboptimal posture and/or movement. To keep things simple without going into detail about the exact muscles involved, anterior pelvic tilt will equate to weakness in the stomach and glute regions, and tightness and overactivity in the lower back and groin areas. This image makes it easy to see why it's called lower cross syndrome. And how does this relate to a pooch belly? Well, coinciding with an anterior pelvic tilt is that the lower back, specifically the lumbar spine, will arc inward, thus moving forward. When this happens, this forward motion subsequently pushes the organs forward, and therefore is one way a belly can start to protrude. Moreover, a further biomechanical influence on the pooch belly can arise from restrictions in breathing. To explain this, we need to touch on what happens underneath the surface when we breathe. Basically, during inhalation, our chest cavity needs to open up to allow the lungs to expand and let air in. Our chest cavity opens by the ribs moving upwards and outwards, and the diaphragm, a huge muscle that covers the inner part of our entire lower rib cage that you can see here, contracting and moving downward. I won't go into what muscles are involved in moving the ribs just to keep things straightforward. Conversely, when we exhale, our chest cavity needs to compress to allow the lungs to let the air out, meaning that the ribs will move downwards and inward, while the diaphragm relaxes and moves upward. But that's not all that happens according to a 2010 study by Tallis et al. In this article, the researchers suggest that the diaphragm moves in sync with the pelvic floor. So, while the diaphragm will expand downward when we breathe, the pelvic floor will simultaneously relax, mimicking the movement of the diaphragm. On the other hand, when you exhale, while the diaphragm moves upward, the pelvic floor will engage and lift. Now, where does a pooch belly fit into all of this? Well, the downward motion of the diaphragm in conjunction with the pelvic floor will shift the intestines downward too, as well as slightly outward, for more room by stretching the stomach wall. Likewise, the opposite is true as they come up. As a result, if there is a lack of cooperation between the pelvic floor muscles and diaphragm, like if there is reduced activity of the pelvic floor muscles for instance, then the intestines may stay put in a descended state, maintaining their protrusion outward. On a side note, if you're interested in undertaking our evidence-based and results-backed personalised Plato weight management program, please click the link in the top right-hand corner of the video or follow the link in the description. Next, another way a pooch belly may arise is from diastasis recti abdominis, which we will be referring to as DRA. This is a condition where the left and right sides of the outermost abdominal muscle will separate due to a connective tissue between them, known as the linea alba, stretching outwards as a result of increased pressure in the abdominal cavity. DRA primarily happens due to pregnancy, but usually resolves by itself afterward. However, not in all cases, as one study notes that as much as 1 in 3 women still experience DRA a year postpartum. It's important to note that it's not just pregnant women that can be affected by DRA, as it can also occur in men and postpartum women. Outside of pregnancy, age and weight status are also risk factors for DRA. Finally, the last cause of a pooch belly we'll be going through today is from plain old bloating. However, the physiological reasons behind bloating aren't plain. They are actually pretty complicated, involving a combination between intestinal gas production in transit, the gut microflora, and how sensitive someone's gut is. Bloating is categorized as someone's subjective sensation of uncomfortable intestinal gas and is quite common, with 1 in 5 people in the United States estimated to have it weekly. As I'm sure you'll know, overeating mostly leads people to experience bloating. Yet the makeup of your overall diet can be another way. For instance, diets high in fatty foods can influence it, as dietary fat takes longer to digest than protein and carbs. So, overall, while a pooch belly can indeed be from excess fat in the midsection and a genetic predisposition, they are not the end-all and be-all. Other discussed contributors should be considered if weight loss doesn't seem to improve the condition, since the biomechanical contributors and DRA can be helped through physiotherapy and bloating via diet modification. Lastly, it's important to point out that there can also be medical reasons for a pooch belly. Therefore, if you suspect this, please see your doctor. Have you had any success in managing a pooch belly? What ways worked for you? We'd love to hear from you in the comments section down below. Additionally, if you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe to our channel. So that has been our video. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.